Energy. Remember, you don't have to put up with me too long today because this is a short chapter. Isn't that wonderful?
Don't say that, Miss Archer. I'm good.
Yeah. You don't believe me, right? No. You got my email, right?
I just saw it.
Okay, all right. I said I'm not too sure if Miguel had sent that attachment at the beginning. I said, let me send it. No, I will not keep you long today. This is a short chapter. Isn't it wonderful? So y'all could, so there's no excuse and no need for extension.
Good morning.
Because I know when you're working and you get home in the afternoon, it's difficult to work on your paper. So none whatsoever.
What did I miss?
I said, remember I said, I told Marielle, I reminded you all that this is a very short chapter. Said, hello, is this Ms. Archer? That's not good. That is not good. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Struggle is real, Miss Archer.
That's what that's what I was saying to her. There is no need now for excuses that my paper will be late. Because at least I gave you a day where you had time to focus.
I can't say anything on that one.
No? Okay.
I tried my best this week to try and do some reading, and you have no idea. The struggle is real.
Okay, that's why I'm saying when you have the advantage of a short chapter, you run with it. Now I know it's not like pre-pandemic where you could go to a library or find someplace quiet, and I know that doesn't exist. Not in this.
I have no excuse, and I still have an excuse.
That's not good.
I know.
That is not good. Okay, let's give them a couple more minutes because others may have tried earlier. We just sent out the link a few seconds ago. Are you all familiar with PTCs?
No.
Not too much.
Okay.
Me, no.
No. What about the B?
I don't know these. I don't know these at all.
You don't? Oh, how sad. That's really sad. Okay, how many? 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay, building on this course, I am considering whether I want to. This firm business and all that is a lot, and you do all the work, and at the end of the day, money stays at the top. How sound is this course as a building ground? I'm considering whether I want to do STEP. Somebody told me that I should do the trust course and then STEP, but what are your thoughts?
Okay, so what's your end game? You want to go and work in a trust company, or you want to become an FCSP? What do you want to do?
A little bit of both. I want to work for maybe another 10 years and then retire to the island and open one little small firm and do some small, well, that family islands don't have small, simple matters, but something like that.
Okay, all right. That's not bad. It can't be a one-man band, just remember that.
Oh no, I have colleagues, you can share the work.
Yeah, no, nothing is wrong with that. But you've never done trust before, right?
No, only in law school. Only the course in law school.
Okay. Well, if you've done the course in law school, then you should be able to go straight into STEP. The only difficulty comes is that you don't have the practical experience.
Right.
Hold on, I have my trust manual here. We could be getting ready to do trust part 2. Trust one, you will know, because that's just a simple, that's the beginning of what a trust is. So it'll be similar to the chapter that we did, but
What?
in more detail. For trust two, which is the one that we're starting now, this company law two is built into that. Because, you know, when you look at the trust structure, there are companies under it. So trust two, part one deals with companies. Trust two, part two deals with investments, special assets, money laundering, and trust committees and discretionary powers. So if you've done your trust and you came out with a good grade, you wouldn't need to do this. Now, we've had people who actually have come in to do it because they didn't do well, or they only did, by their work experience, they only just covered the very first section and not the second section. But since you're doing trust, this company law too, you have an idea structurally of the type of business that comes under a trust.
So would you be able to do company law, do trust two without doing trust one?
Yeah, because you can just show them that you've already done trust in your law program, and you're just doing this as a refresher, and just say you just want to do part two too.
All right, there's a consideration.
Yeah, that's a consideration. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, this is, I understand what you're saying, because I've had a lot of students who did the compliance program for the same reason.
Yeah, I did compliance and I don't even use it. And my law firm, the firm that I worked with, doesn't have anybody who has the diploma. Yet they don't ask me anything and they do some strange things.
Oh.
So I have to keep my mouth shut.
Oh, yeah. Because a lot of them have gone off into a lot of.
The corporate secretary does the compliance work and the due diligence, and she is
Without certification?
Yeah.
Oh, that's dangerous.
She's better than the person who actually is the compliance officer. That's my point.
Oh, she is.
She's more, she knows whatever, but you know, the firm wants the client and the money, and they take it on. Y'all can edit recording, right?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
I remind him, but he normally goes through. That's why it takes a long time for him to put them up.
Okay, because
yeah, he has to edit it.
Yeah, but that's what's happening. The corporate secretary does all the onboarding, and she knows what's required. She, you know, she'll come and say, I need your input on something. I'll be like, no, that is not what I know, and this is not what I learned. And you could read this, read the act, this, that, and the next thing, you know. The firm says, oh, take on the client.
Oh, that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. And when I say dangerous, I don't mean just for the firm, but for the jurisdiction.
Okay. Okay. And a lot of firms are doing it. And some of the bigger firms, well, a lot of the firms are doing it. And then the person who is the MLRO or compliance officer is not qualified. They read the act and say, oh, X, Y, and Z, and yada, yada, yada. But in terms of doing, you know, due diligence and all of this, that, and the next thing, it's not there.
That's not good.
I know.
It's like a ticking time bomb. That's what that a ticking time bomb.
Well, a lot of these firms are ticking time bombs then.
But now you see why when the CFATF came, that their focus was on that area. The designated, yeah, they worried, they're really worried about it. And I know that stopped it short in terms
I
of,
get it.
yeah.
But if someone walks into the firm or someone is introduced to principals or the partners of the firm and by one of their paying clients, one of their moneyed clients, they might do one quick Google check and this, that, and the next, and then determine whether they're going to take somebody on. And that's the truth of the matter. When I talk with my colleagues and my friends who are sole practitioners or who work in other firms, oh, you know, that senior golf buddy, part friend, this, that, and next thing, and they just took them on, and then they do the due diligence and research later after they've started an action or taken the person's retainer and started work.
Mm.
How do you back out?
You know, it's difficult then to back out.
Exactly, and if these people have money, they slaughter you.
Because they need
slaughter.
money runs the company, and then they're gonna say you are not helping them in terms of growing the business.
And exactly, and they run they reputation wise, because you know money don't advertise, money to talk to money. Money to talk to money, and money then in turn speaks to other money and say, hey, use this person. They're aggressive and this, that, and next thing. They might cost you money, but they get your results eventually. Oh, use this person. Don't use that person. I try to work with that person. That person. That's what happens. Just like with in the Bahamas, like I was talking to one of my nephews today and saying, hey, y'all don't read.
What did he say?
27 years old, and he had to eventually comply and say, yes, Auntie, you're right. Because they don't read.
They just look at full.
They'll get everything off social media, and y'all don't know how to analyze or think through something because y'all don't really know how the systems work. And I say that with this warning. I am a Bahamian. I believe in Bahamians. I don't care if you're green, purple, yellow, white, whatever. I believe if you're a Bahamian, I believe you should come first. And he is of the belief that, or his understanding is, the foreigner comes first in this country. And so then we had a conversation about the recent elections. And did you read this party's proposal? Did you read that party's proposal? Which one seems to make sense? Which one seems more attainable? And he couldn't answer that question. And I said, 27 years old, you can't read. You don't want to read, but you will listen to the person voice note or these person on these social media on this, that, and the next thing, who sometimes are paid to put a certain narrative out there. And you believe every word that says when only maybe 1% of that is true. But they're paid, or their agenda is to change the narrative.
Yeah. They're out there and they're just floating.
Exactly.
They just float. That's the young generation today. I think by the time they hit 50, then they'll be saying, oh, okay, now let's see what we're going to do about the Bahamas as a country. But it's too late then.
Exactly.
It's much too late.
Yeah, that's why I want to die
young. You know what?
Die young and fabulous.
Oh, Lord. Just because you say that, Lord will leave you here for a long time.
I shouldn't say that out loud. Yeah. Say it out there.
For a long time. No, that is a good one, because, you know, there are a lot of second homeowners in the family islands.
And a lot of them own companies or holding companies, and they, you know, they need their little immigration application made for their caregiver or their groundskeeper and stuff like that, or those who rent their properties out and they want to send somebody to manage the property. They need works like that, maintain companies and make immigration application and those like little employment matters.
Yeah.
You know, draft an affidavit, do a conveyance.
Now just make sure you go on the family island and get swing in terms of buying a piece of property, because you should, that's your plan.
I go where I come from.
Oh, okay. Because other than that, I tell you, they be swinging people left and right.
I don't want to say the island, but I have a colleague who was constantly calling me to ask me just to bounce things off of me. And she had an incident where this person sold somebody a piece of land on the family island. And, you know, attorneys don't visit the land. And they put that in their contract that they don't visit the land. You know, this is based on simply a review of paper and you answering requisitions. But this person bought this property and they went to see the property, but they only stood at the front of the property with seeing like solid ground and this, that, and the next thing. But less than a third of the way in the property is a big lake. It's a big pond. But they didn't go beyond the boundaries. They didn't walk the property.
Oh.
And the person who sold it to them knew that this pond was in the middle there. And so the question now is, what does the person do? I said, you go and you say, you know, what you sold me is incorrect. And you ask for the money back and they void the transaction. And hopefully the conveyance isn't, the transaction isn't complete. And, you know, they pay whatever cost they paid to the attorneys to do the legal work. That was about.
Listen here. They say we were pirates. I mean, we were not pirates because we came down descendants from slaves in America.
Exactly.
And some from London and different places when they brought their slaves with them. But we are real pirates.
We learn from the best.
We are pirates. We are pirates. Everybody took somebody else.
Yeah. He's selling land 2 and 3 times, the same land, the same plot of land. And the person who buy come and say, oh, this is my property. You don't record it. You don't record it. So the person who records it first is the winner.
And it ain't into that. They're not registering it. They sell it 3 to 4 times and get some money.
But the persons who are buying aren't recording it because they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay the taxes to record it.
Oh, of course not.
And that's the problem. That's why when someone else see the land and they go do their research and they go back to the person who they see is the last recorded owner, person say, okay, he's smiling in his head, let me do this again. And then he disappears.
That's how it is. Okay, it's 12:53 and only look like the 2 of you coming on today. Today is a very quiet day. I can't hear a sound from nowhere.
Is that good or bad?
I don't know. I don't know, because this whole week the roads were very busy. I don't know what's busy doing what. Just a lot of traffic. But today seems to be, they're probably tired.
Yeah, let's hope they're tired.
Yeah, I think they're tired. All right, so let's start with PTCs. So a PTC, okay, let's step back. When we did company law 1, we focus on a company established either under the Companies Act or the IBC Act.
Right.
And we know that the IBC Act was more geared towards our international clients, making it less expensive and faster, simpler. So we moved from there in company law 2, and we looked at other products that the Bahamas offers in terms of structure, either for asset protection or for wealth. So we looked at trusts, we looked at foundations, we looked at nonprofit organizations. So now today we're going to look at two other products that we offer, and that's the private trust companies and the Bahamas executive entities. So we start with the PTC. So the PTC can be established either under the Companies Act or under the IBC Act. And the PTC is governed by the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act and the PTC regulations itself. So that means that it falls under the central bank. So PTC can be limited by shares or by guarantee. Minimum capital is 5,000. Incorporated under either two. Of course, if you're incorporated under the Companies Act, you must have your 2 shareholders, 2 directors, and then of course follow the same requirements under the IBC, the requirements for directorship and shareholder. A record of the beneficial owners of the shares and the register of shareholders has to be maintained by a registered representative. So this is where you will come in, Lisa, because you will actually have to be licensed as a registered representative.
Okay.
The shares in the PTC can be held by a foundation, trustees of a purpose trust, or by an individual or corporate shareholder. PTCs are exempt from business license, provided that they meet the requirement of a PTC.
Why? I'm
Hmm?
sorry.
Why?
You don't need a
Because-
business license.
But normally they don't do any business in the Bahamas. Don't forget, this is for wealth and asset management.
Okay, now I'm understand. I had to ask why because I wasn't understanding that part.
Yeah, they don't do business in the Bahamas as such. These, okay, the PTCs that I'm aware of, they are owned by foreigners, and the assets that they manage, assets that they actually provide the services for, are in other parts of the world.
Okay, so that's why they don't need a business license.
Yeah. So
Okay.
to be exempt, the designation person has to be identified. The company has to comply with the PTC regulations, and it can't solicit or conduct trust business. So
So how do they get their business?
the PTC,
Yes.
it's a familial thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could have, let's say it's you, and you say, okay, let's establish a PTC. You could have it whereby you could have one trust that belongs to you. You could have underneath it another trust that belongs to your uncle, another one that belongs to your cousin. But it's normally a familial thing with a group of trusts. So they have to have a memo in arts stipulating that they only act as trustee. And it could be for one trust or more than one trust. If there's more than one designated person, each designated person must be related by blood. Now you can also have it whereby the person can be deceased and the designated person is mentioned in the will, which would be the deceased person. So as a PTC, to operate in the Bahamas, you must have a registered agent. And that person is either licensed by the central bank or by the Securities Commission as an FCSP. The registered representative can act on behalf of the PTC as a secretary, a director, or an agent. And they more or less, they're like a police. Because they have to, one, make sure that the PCC operates lawfully as a PTC, and they have to provide the AML and the due diligence reviews. Now, let me see if I could find this for you. Right now, we have registered as PTCs over 130 PTCs. And the registered representative of those are mainly corporate trust companies or law firms that have FCSP licenses. I'm looking to see if there's, how many of them have small FCSPs. I see one, I see two. Most of these are either subsidiaries or actual trust companies. That's what I see on the listing from the central bank. So from a due diligence perspective, the registered representative, that's the FCSP, must have a minimum share capital of 50,000. So you need to start saving. It must retain the constitutive documents and verify and maintain the records relating to the identities of the settler or any other person that's providing assets, the protector of the trust, and any persons that have a vested interest in the trust itself. As a registered representative, you have to notify the inspector of the central bank when the PTC no longer meets the requirements for the business license exemption. And of course, provide any other details that the inspector needs to know in order to effect the change. So it's just like, it's like any other regulatory body. Once there is a change that impacts the license, you have to advise the regulator. Because, you know, especially for the Securities Commission, if your changes are not sent in a timely manner, then of course, administrative penalties will occur. The registered representative must notify the inspector if it ceases to act as the registered representative of a PTC. Again, any delay, you will incur administrative penalties. So the registered representative is required to obtain an annual certificate of compliance from the directors of the PTC. And that is to confirm that they have not undertaken any business as trustees for a trust, other than for the designated persons, and that the directors have acted honestly and in good faith in the best interest of the PTC. So as a registered representative, you have to maintain certain records, and that's the M&As, the designating instrument, professional resume of the special director, the trust instruments for each trust, the acknowledgement from the settlers of each trust, and the client profile as described in the legislation. So as a registered representative, when you act in your role in carrying out AML reviews and due diligence. The registered representative has to verify the identity of the designated person, the protector, if there is one, in the trust, the vested beneficiaries of those trusts, and the shareholding structure. That's the settlor if he acts as a trustee or any other person who provides assets to the trust. The registered representative also, they act as the MLRO and they have to report any suspicious transactions. A PTC also have at least one special director, and that special director is a person who has trust experience of at least 5 years, or they could have a degree in law or finance or accountancy or investments. The PTC should also have at least one officer who may be a secretary. And the secretary or special director can be an individual or it can be a company or more than one company. So
Ms.
as a
Asha, Ms.
Go
Asha,
ahead.
sorry. You know, like, because they're regulated by the central bank and by the Securities Commission, do they need to get approval for those persons to be special directors?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
Oh, okay.
Again, why?
What do you mean, why?
Okay. I understand the director need have no other special qualifications other than they are sound mind and whatever, but you're going to mess with people's money.
Yeah. Okay, let me qualify when I say not like that. When you send in the application states who is the special director.
Okay.
But I know, like, with the Securities Commission now, and with like MLROs and stuff like that, they require that they be approved before being appointed. That's why I asked, considering that this type of entity requires to be registered or regulated by both the central bank and the Securities Commission, it seems. And they have like upped their like regulatory rules, really, especially with, I know, for in funds particularly.
Yeah, because they've had a lot of instances with funds.
Yes.
Now, if the licensee is a trust company, then they fall under the central bank. If they are FPSP, they fall under Securities Commission.
Right, okay.
Okay? So if you're under the central bank and you are already a trust company,
You're already regulated.
Yes, and the persons who are providing these services, unless they are of a lower caliber, which most likely they are not, because they will always give the position to a senior person, but a junior person assisting. But the bank does not approve a trust director in a normal trust company. That's not a regulated function.
Okay.
Okay, so the regulated function under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act is the senior official 1, the senior official 2, and then the MLRO.
Right, so this is really being regulated at the top of whoever is the I guess registered office, or
Yes.
okay, there's the difference. Okay.
But see now, if you're doing let's say you actually establishing a PTC, right? And you have to have certain requirements in terms of being qualifying as a PTC. So PTC must have a registered representative. And that registered representative, when they've accepted that they're acting in that capacity, should have also done their due diligence. So the registered representative. And I am now saying that this person is a special director. They should have done their due diligence.
Yeah, but we all know sometimes that don't happen like that.
Well, okay, so that's what Lisa was saying before. We know it doesn't happen. And as we get slapped every time by these international organizations, of course, we keep very quiet. But we know that it's only just a matter of time before the eggs are cracked.
Yeah, and hopefully they don't get cracked.
Well, hopefully, but everything is a matter of time.
Well,
What I wanted to recommend for you all to watch is a movie on Netflix. You have Netflix?
yes.
Okay, so I want you to watch there's a movie called The Mechanism,
Okay.
and it shows you just the background of how they brought down corruption in Venezuela with the Petrobras scandal. All had to do with companies moving money offshore. It's really amazing the way in which, that's why they call it the mechanism, because the way it was structured, it was so difficult to follow the money. But if you watch it sometime this week, then you could discuss it in next week's class, and you'll see it's mind-boggling.
Okay, will do.
It was a
Now that I could do. I don't know about reading 61 pages like today's stuff, but
there's a movie called The Mechanism, and the next one is called The Laundromat.
okay.
Both of those are talking about companies and moving monies. And when you watch those two movies, then you'll see from the flip side why the international arena is after all of these centers that have so much money and managing so much money. Because a lot of it is not legitimate. So the PTC, if you go to the PTC regulations that I sent you, who says 61? What is 61 pages?
One of those documents, maybe it's the executive one, is 61 pages. One is 22 and one is 61.
I don't expect you to read all of it.
Oh, okay.
No, but I sent it because I said you may not be familiar with it.
And we're not. At least I'm not.
Right. So that's why I sent it. Because you may say, okay, but we did this chapter, but what's the source for all of this? So I provided it. So let's look at the private trust regulations. And so it gives you the definition of a special director, and the person doesn't have to be resident in the Bahamas. It tells you that they are exempted. And then on section 4, it tells you the requirements for PTC. And it tells you a special director can also be an officer of the registered representative, like I was telling you earlier. So if it is a professional trust company, one of their officers can actually act as the special director. Of course, that's at a fee. And that's the part there with the change. Paid up capital of not less than 5,000 for the PTC. And then it says you cannot act as a registered representative until you have obtained the approval, written approval of the governor. So the before FCSP can act as a registered representative for a private trust company. They have to apply to the central bank to perform the functions of a registered representative. And once an application is put in, the governor has certain things that he has to consider. And one is whether the FCSP itself is fit and proper to act as a registered representative for private trust companies. So that means then that the central bank would then liaise with the Securities Commission and find out if there's been any infractions by that FCSP. Whether the financial corporate service provider has sufficient human and physical resources to discharge its duties as an RR of a PTC. They want to look at the business record and the relevant experience of the applicant or of the beneficial owner of the applicant. And of course, the central bank will always look at what's in the best interest of the financial system in the Bahamas. And if the governor considers that it won't be in the public's interest, of course, they can refuse an application by an FCSP to act as a registered representative. And it doesn't have to give any reasons why it's refusing it. It'll just say rejected. And then notice of change. Under section 12, it gives you the requirements for providing private trust services. So it says that no RR should act for a private trust company unless it is in possession of a designating instrument. It has been reasonably satisfied by the PTC that the private trust company is being established for lawful purpose. So that means that once you are an RR, you have to know the purpose for the PTC. And knowing the purpose requires you to do due diligence. Because as you see, when you watch the movie of The Mechanism, it was for, the purpose was established for lawful purposes, but it was unlawful because it was corruption. So they would say, yes, the funds are coming from a contract, and the funds were coming from a contract with the government. But these were padded figures. A registered representative shall, where he may at all times, maintain the Bahamas copies and a list of documents that a PTC must have in its possession. A list of all the PTC companies for which he acts as a registered representative. An acknowledgement as set out in the second schedule, trust instruments for each trust, the CV of the special director of each PTC, a designating instrument, and the memo and odds. So the PTC is not a bad structure, I guess, vehicle. I've not heard any inquiries or questions or negative comments about the PTC, especially coming from the CFATF. So far, this product at least hasn't, I guess, come to their attention as being used for money laundering. Any questions on the PTC?
Yeah.
Okay,
None from me.
none for you. Oh, all right.
No, I mean, I really just don't see the purpose of it, but
What does that mean? Explain that to me.
I guess if you have a group of, like you said, it's more for families, but you know, one person holds the group of trusts underneath it. But I mean, unless it's a savings in terms of fees, I just don't see the point of us all putting all of our trust together in one company.
But okay, so the
I
first
don't see
thing,
the added protection or purpose of that.
okay, so the driving force of it, because I remember when we were just drafting the legislation at the central bank, and it really was, okay, let me give you an example. We had licensees under the central bank that had a restricted trust license. You heard about that before?
No, I don't know that I didn't know that you had either restricted or unrestricted licenses. I know you have it for fund administrators because that's what I'm most familiar with, but I
Oh,
didn't realize it was
yeah,
the same.
right.
It was the
So,
same thing.
right. So under the Banks and Companies Regulations Act, the different types of licenses you can have. One of them was restricted trust license. And what does restricted trust license did was that the company could provide trust services to, I think first it was like 7 trusts, and then they would narrow it sometimes down to 5 or 4, depends on the expertise and whether you had the adequate resources and experience to deal with it. So let's just say you got a restricted trust license and you had 5 different trusts, right? Each trust is a different family. So when a trust was extinguished, which means it's terminated, so you went down to 4. Then another trust over the years is finished, you're down to 3. And then sometimes you're down to 1. So the lot, some of those instances, a restricted trust had only 1 trust under it or just 2. They were under professional trustees, they were paying a lot of money. The question then came from these trust companies by individually, why can't we manage ourselves? If the assets in the trust are our operating companies, which we run ourselves, there's no outsiders in our companies. Why can't we manage our own business? So that's the catalyst why this came out. So I could give you an example of a company that did manufactured manure, agricultural products. They had about 10 companies in South America. And they were owned ultimately by the grandfather, and then his children and his children's children. So the companies were distinct, and each one of them had a trust. No outsiders on their boards. They wanted to manage their own money. And that's how PTCs came about.
Oh, okay. Because like I said, to me, I just didn't see the purpose.
Yeah,
But
yeah, because you're talking about really wealthy people that are running a conglomerate, and they have different arms doing different things.
right.
Right. And so they want to manage their money. Another one could be someone who is in the production of liquor. So you have one trust that deals with the production of whiskey, one that deals with production of white wine and red wine. You see what I'm saying? But it's all one family. That's what a PTC is all about.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't think of a trust as being a business itself. You know what I mean? I more think of trust
All right.
as
So
something that people do for, I guess their wills kind of thing. That's how I consider trust. Maybe that's, because
okay.
I'm not a
Explain it.
trust person. Yeah.
Okay. So let me explain a little bit more to you. You can have a trust that's created, right? Within the assets of the trust, you have different items. But underneath that trust, you have companies operating. So when those companies make a profit and it's actually dividends are declared, it goes up into the trust
Yes, yeah.
because they're owned by the trust company. And so that kind of structure serves a lot of different purposes. And then you utilize the PTC as your trustee.
Okay, I getting it. I getting it now.
Right, so PTC is your trustee. Then you have the trust, and you have all the underlying companies operate. So when you have a structure like that, one, you're protecting the beneficial owner and the assets. You're protecting all the information because it stays within the family.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I getting it now because
Right.
the PTC is really the trustee of all the other trusts.
Right. And then
Right.
don't forget, PTC is being operated by the family again.
Right.
Only
At
the
another,
PTC
it's more like levels then.
Yes. So only thing the PTC has coming from the side of it is a registered representative who is either a licensed trust company in the Bahamas or a financial corporate service provider in the Bahamas. But they're running their operations themselves. So in that structure too, they more or less, it provides the framework for succession. So when I say framework for succession, you have to look at it as if you're not in that structure, if it's me or you, we have the right of will, or you just die intestate, let everybody fight over it. But when it's in this framework, succession is already taken out because you're already securing the whole legacy that the family has. And then you protecting the wealth for future generations of the family because everything is in a structure.
Right. And that structure is regulated.
Yes.
Great. Okay. I get it. I guess I could see that point. I just didn't,
Yeah.
couldn't see it from that standpoint as to why go through all of this just to have a trustee.
So while you sitting down in your office running your company, each brother or brother cousin or whatever it is, everybody running their company is, you don't have to worry about who's attacking who or who's fighting who or who's trying to take this, because there is a framework in place that everybody has agreed to. And there's a protection for everybody. So if Uncle Lou falls down dead, we don't all have to be figuring out, oh my God, who's going to run this company? Okay, who's going to be doing this now? Who's getting this money? It just automatically flows because succession is already taken care of by the trust that governs these companies.
Okay.
Sounds good. So you have the PTC, and then you have the trust, and then you have the companies underneath it.
Makes sense now.
Oh, good. So now let me add more to that. We now have the B, the Bahamas Executive Entity. And that Bahamas Executive Entity can sit on top of the PTC.
Jesus. Now that sounds like, are they trying to hide?
No.
Oh,
This is a skillful art.
It's a lot of companies on top of companies on top of companies.
Yes. Okay. So that's why company law 1. And you know, a company has many different purposes. So you're not hiding. It's the purpose. And as long as the purpose is lawful, there is nothing wrong. That's always the Bahamas argument. If the purpose is lawful, there is nothing wrong. So you're happy now?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I was just being facetious.
I know, but I mean, sometimes it's good so you could understand better, because you have two things. You have the products that we sell that a lot of international persons want for that same thing, asset protection. And you have the international bodies who are saying that these vehicles are being used for money laundering. Now, of course, when you watch the movie this week on the mechanism, or if you watch the laundromat, which is like a little simpler, the mechanism is more complex because there's a bigger scheme, and it's an actual dramatization of something that happened in real life versus the laundromat, which is a little story they made up, but it still talks about money laundering. You will begin to see why the international bodies are always attacking our products. Basically, just what you said, that is being used, as a layering in order to hide monies. Yes, people do that. But it comes at a cost to the jurisdiction.
Yeah,
So,
because I know like we have in dealing with due diligence and stuff, when we see a company owned by a company that's owned by another company, I mean, like when you keep looking and you have to go like 4 or 5 layers down, it's like it's always like a red flag. Not that the person is doing anything wrong, but like you said, I mean, if the businesses are there for legitimate reasons, then there's nothing wrong with it. But it tends to be a red flag when you keep seeing these companies owned by another company that's owned by another company. You're taught to see it as a red flag.
okay, so when you see that kind of structure, the first thing you look at is, where is the company incorporated? Because it could be for tax purposes, which sends you down a different road.
Well, there you have that a lot of them are there for tax purposes, because as soon as you have a distribution of your funds and then you end up causing a tax transaction in your country, then you have to pay. And
Yes.
a lot of them don't want to have to pay right away for whatever purposes.
So that's what I'm saying. So once it's taxation, you're going on a different road. That's CRS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different road. So that's when you see those layers, that's the first thing you have to think about. Okay, is it money laundering, or are they evading taxes? Then another thing you have to look at too, in addition to that, is where are they doing business? Because you have to be careful how the money flows. Because if they're doing business in 4 or 5 different countries, it depends when they provide their structuring to those various jurisdictions, how far up do they go? They may need a company that's incorporated in jurisdiction A because they're doing business there. They need a different company for jurisdiction B. But when they send you that structure, they're showing you it as a layering, because the money is passing from one through the next one.
Yeah, I mean, once you could show that legitimately the money that's coming from this entity is being used to do this thing at this entity, then I mean, no problem.
There's
No
no
problem.
problem.
And
Now,
once the names are the same.
right. Now, the next thing about this is there is onboarding and then there is due diligence. Once you know what they're doing, where they're doing it, and why they're doing it, then that becomes a part of your due diligence process. When I say due diligence, reading or your weekend, you now have the monitor, either the jurisdiction where they're doing business, the sector that they're doing business in, because money laundering happens.
Right. Well,
So
that's
yes,
part of
you'll
your
say,
risk rating though, right? When you
yeah, but don't
right,
forget that the risk
onboarding.
rating goes, right. The risk rating goes in, you're onboarded. But I'm talking
Right.
about due diligence now, that ongoing. In the back of your mind, you need to know, I have 10 clients operating in this jurisdiction, in this sector, operating in this jurisdiction and in this sector. What is going on there? That's how deep and intense this goes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only point I wanted to make sure you understand. Yeah, but it's the way of the world today. People don't get rich by working 9 to 5.
Yep, that's the truth.
I
Definitely.
always say that. Does not happen. I say I work from 9 to 5. I don't see it. I say unless I work from 9 to 5 with no children, no habits, and save every penny, I can see it happening. But with children and the cost of living, I don't see how it's done.
But you can't have no house or car either.
Uh,
Exactly.
Not the prices we dealing with.
You live in home. No, you live in home.
you can't live home either. These parents today saying get out their house.
I know that.
Let me go live
But
my
I'm
life.
saying, when I look at the things that people have, then you begin to wonder, how is that possible? But anyhow, just watch the mechanism. Trust me, your eyes will be opened. Your eyes will be opened because you'll be saying, you couldn't trust me. You will not be able to wait for class next Saturday. Your eyes will be open. That's all I will say. Because when you look at what happened there, your eyes, especially Lisa one, will go right here in the Bahamas. Trust me. Okay, so let's look at this next product now. Since y'all excited now, y'all just want to get all these products out to see what y'all can do next. The executive entity, or the B. I call it the B for Bahamas. So this has been around from 2012. Not too long, still a young little thing. And the B is for executive functions only. So they can provide administrative, supervisory, or fiduciary services. So the features of the B is it has limited liability, like a company, similar to a foundation because it has a charter. It has no shareholders. It can contract with third parties, like any company. It can sue and be sued in its own name, like a company. It has no minimum capital. It only required to maintain assets necessary to carry out its executive functions. It can only perform executive functions relative to entities, trusts, or other corporate vehicles. It can hold shares, securities, or ownership interests in a legal entity. So a B is established by a charter, and that's a typo there. It is registered with the Registrar General. So take the word not out. It is registered. It is required to be registered. And the charter has to contain the name and the signature of the founder, the purpose of the B, the provisions for appointing and removing officers or council members, because not all not all Bs have a council member. And the foundation may also reserve certain powers and rights to himself, but that has to be within the charter. So it sounds similar to a foundation, but it's not a foundation because it only provides executive functions. Now, just the same way when we said a PTC must have a registered representative who must be an FCSB or a trust company, The founder also has to appoint an executive agent. And that executive agent, again, is either an FCSP or a trust company. Isn't that wonderful?
Say that again.
An executive entity, the founder has to appoint an executive entity agent. And that can only be an FCSP or a trust company.
Okay. So that means we get jobs.
Of course. You have to
That's
understand how
important.
this thing works.
That's important.
You're right. So you don't forget now, our present Attorney General was the one that came up with the icon after going to Brazil. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. So what they try to do is they try to find from their clients what exactly, okay, where we fall short, or what do they have that we don't have, and try to adapt it whereby we can make a product that our clients would be interested in. So this is another product that they tried and they put together. They were talking about it in 2010. They're trying to find a way whereby you could change the structure and have this executive function by itself. So you see how they come up with these things. So the officers of the B, they administer the B in accordance with the purpose. And of course, they have to follow the charter, the articles, and the act itself. The consul for the B is responsible for the supervision and the administration of the B by the officers, because they have to make sure that they're in compliance with the act. So the B can be a part of a private wealth management or corporate structure. Because what it actually does, it enhances supervisory, or let's say it enhances fiduciary and governance. And it also gives the structure more continuity, because you actually have an entity that I guess is perpetual. Plus, if you have an executive entity rather than individuals, you could reduce liability. And then it could also protect the individual's identity, because the individuals then are within the B. And of course, the B can simplify your operations and it can reduce costs. Any questions?
Sorry, can you go back to where you said that was a typo so I stepped away for
Oh.
a minute.
Okay. Under the heading formation and maintenance of a B, the
Right.
first sentence, I say the B is established by a charter, which is, take out not.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's a typo. It is required to be registered. So before we go for the day, let's look at our 61 pages that you all screamed about. We're not doing all 61, don't die. I want you to look at section 7, which speaks to the charter of the B. So the first thing you see is that they say the name itself has executive entity, or EE or E.E. And it has to have the details of the founder, the name and address. Is the legal person, where it's registered, and the registration number. And the address in the Bahamas for service of documents. The purpose for establishing the charter. Then the executive entity. The number and description of the officers. If the executive entity is established for an indefinite period of time or definite period, and then the event upon which the EE can be actually wound up or revoked. And then the name and address of the EEA, the executive entity agent, with their address. And then, of course, under subsection 2, it gives you all of the provision that the charter may, without limitation, include provisions for the registration of any rights or powers of the founder. Notice the similarities when you go through these, because it goes all the way to 9, 10. Yeah, it goes all the way to M. The reservations of any rights or powers to the founder. Remember, in a trust, the settlor can retain certain powers, such as to invest, where he can give investment advice to the trustees without liability. He could actually retain put the provisions in the charter for the appointment, removal, and period of office and authority of all the officers, the bind executive entity. He can make provisions for the appointment, removal, and period of office and authority of the consul. He can also do the same thing for an auditor, for a secretary. He can put provision for permitting the amendment of the charter and the circumstances under which he can do so. He can include requiring or permitting the making of articles, permitting amendment to the articles and the circumstances to do so, specifying such higher standards of care, higher or lower levels of exoneration and indemnification for officers or consul members. You can give the notice and quorum, voting, consents, and other matters governing the conduct of meetings. You can set out any minimum level of executive entity assets, and you can specify any alternative dispute procedures. So that's the charter. The articles can be in English. Well, the charter can be in English, can be typed or printed and divided into paragraphs numbered consecutively. The articles itself, it's executed by the founder. And it also can be in English, typed or printed. So powers and obligations of a founder, that's section 9. Where there is more than one founder, the power of the founder under the charter and the articles and the act shall be exercised by the founders acting jointly, unless where the charter or the articles provide otherwise. The founder may, of course, in accordance with the charter, assign any and all of his rights, powers, and obligations under the act or the charter to such persons or persons as the founder shall in his absolute discretion determine, subject of course to the person's consent in writing. And then it goes more into and the part 3 is the officers, executive entities, secretary, consul, and auditor. Section 28 speaks to the requirement for registration of an executive entity. This is just the documents that have to be presented to the registrar. And just like under the Companies Act for pre-incorporation, under the Executive Entities Act, any action that's taken out prior to registration can be ratified once the executive entity has received their certificate of registration from the registrar. And you could find that in section 35, subsection 2, C, B. Sound long, right? And of course, if there's no ratification by the executive entity, then of course the person is personally liable. It then goes into the act, goes into the powers of the officers and the council members. And then part 7 goes into meetings, inspection of minutes. And then part 8 is with keeping records. That's the special audit. And then it goes into 9, which is the removal from the register, revocation and amendment of charter, and winding up. And of course, what the registrar expects. As part 10, the documents that should be kept at the registered office, what should be delivered to the registrar, it says here in section 54, this section applies to the delivery to the registrar, and it says the document should be in English, state in a prominent position the name of the executive entity and the number with which it is registered, be in the form approved by the registrar, and conform to such requirements as the registrar may specify for the purpose of enabling him to copy any document. I wonder why it has to be in English.
Because we are an English-speaking country.
No, what I mean is why they didn't add the words be easily convertible to English. Does that mean that no one at the registrar speaks another language?
I guess so.
That's not good.
I thought all documents here had to be actually, if it's not in English, it needs to be translated to English to be accepted.
Easily convertible.
But who's gonna
That's what-
convert it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And under the, if you're regulated, it says easily convertible in English or easily convertible, which means that there must be someone on your staff that can speak the language that is written in. But they have apps now. You can actually take the document, put on the app, and slide the phone over the document, and it converts it.
Yeah, but I think you still need it to be like certified by a accepted translator. Yeah.
Yes.
For it to be approved or as a proper document translation.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I just
But I
say,
think
as it says here, be in English. It to me, it makes it so restrictive.
Right. I think the central bank has this thing too, like if you have people on your staff who you could prove are fluent in the language, they can do the translations for you, I think. Right.
No, you're right. What I'm saying is, even if you go in and before you even ask the staff, you have
the Google Translate.
You can actually translate it yourself, so you can know exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, I do that all the time when clients send me stuff and the first bit of the email is in another language. so I could catch what they say.
Yeah, so you will have an idea. Oh, you could even have the one when they come and they're speaking, it could translate just as they're speaking to you.
Yeah, that's slow though.
No, man.
I mean, it's slow because a lot of times, like when they're speaking, and they're speaking, even like say it's Portuguese, it's their version of. It's not always, it's a little bit
Oh, yeah, like
dialect.
that. Yes,
Yes. Right.
I found that out in Mexico. This guy was speaking and he had his app actually transferred what he was saying. But if you went somewhere else, you gotta know, I don't know what they were saying. Because the app was giving me some strange English words. I said, what is this?
Right.
Yeah, so I understand. Because it's just like if you here in the Bahamas.
Correct.
Nasubians have a different slang from persons from Crooked Island
Yes.
or from Eleuthera.
Definitely.
They don't speak the same slang.
No. Especially H's, lack of H's.
Yes. So it's just you just can't say everyone speaks the same Spanish, because Spanish in Spain and Spanish in South America is two different Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of difficult. Yeah, but this is a very comprehensive piece of legislation in terms of the requirements. And they also have the executive entity regulations. But it's not long, it only setting out the fees. So instead of putting all of this in the notes, I thought it would just be simpler to just have the actual act and read it, because the act is not difficult to read, because it only just sets out the requirements under each one of the sections. And would you like for me to have Miguel send you a copy of a charter of an executive entity?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I have one here. I will let Miguel send this to you. And you can see, hold on, I don't think I had a foundation. No, I don't have.
That'll be good to, when you actually see it in action, it makes it make sense.
Okay, all right, so I have an executive entity. Hold on, let me see if I have a foundation. I don't think I sent you a foundation, right?
No.
Oh. Hold on. What is this for? Okay, so I have an executive entity. So let me see if I could find you a foundation. You put look for. I thought I had one in here. Okay, but I have this one. All right. So you could take your time now. You could read the executive entity act. And of course, the PTC is no, you don't have to read the regulations, because the regulations I've already highlighted in the notes. So you don't need to read that. And that's it for the day. I told you I'm not keeping you long.
I have a question actually on the midterm.
Go
Did
ahead.
you have, I know you said it wasn't going to be as extensive as the capstone, but like, what's your what do you think is about the right amount of, I don't know, pages, words, I don't know, for what we should be able to capture all of that? Because I was looking at it, it seems like we could go really long.
Yeah, you could go really long. Depends on how detailed you want it to be.
Oh, okay, so that's okay.
Yeah. It doesn't have, it's no limit to it.
Oh, okay, all right.
There's no limit to it. So you could get cracking on that one today. I haven't received any yet. I'm just patiently waiting.
You said November 5th.
Yeah, excuse me. Do you know how close that is?
I do know. I realize that's 2 weeks away.
Of course, it's around the corner. That's what I'm telling you. Okay, so next class we're doing funds, eh? I think. Yes, investment funds and the icon. So everybody is familiar with the investment funds, I could hear.
Yeah.
I know that one
Okay, Muriel, you know that one, right?
very well. Yes.
Oh, you hear that?
Muriel teaching next class.
I'm about to tell her now she needs to present.
Oh, what? Oh, hold on. I say I know
No,
it
no,
very well.
Hold on. Let me tell you, when you don't have to go through the chapter because it's expected that you read it before you come. So you would give the practical side of it. You could take it from different angles. You either can do what you do every day, or you could talk about the challenges of meeting the requirements in the legislation. So the different ways you could present it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not difficult. I know the new legislation is very comprehensive. It is very
Very.
long. There's lots of requirements. And I'm sure a lot of people find it very frustrating, especially when they come with all of these fines.
Yes. Only thing I could say about the Securities Commission is, unlike the central bank, I feel they don't have the staffing to really, be stringent with the FCSPs or the fund administrators. It's just not enough of them to go through and really be picking and finding people for things. So that's unfortunate that they have such a act now that has so much requirements, but not enough, in my opinion, staff to really deal with it.
I could give it. I could tell you about the history of that. From my view.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like over the years. As I worked at the central bank.
Oh, okay.
So right for 42 years. So I
Oh,
know.
wow. Yeah. Part of the Securities Commission problem is that they have such a high turnover rate. They can't.
I'm about to tell you now why that is so. I'll tell you why that is so. What I tell you, not 42, 32 years. Is it 32? Yeah, 32 years. 32, 31, 32 years I work at Central Bank. The issue is this. When the Securities Commission was established, there weren't a lot of people with securities experience to work there in the first place. Secondly, those that were working in the area, a lot of them foreigners, of course, were not going to go to the Securities Commission, a government facility, because the salary just were not competitive. So they got a lot of bankers, ex-bankers, and then young people. But over time, I'll tell you what I saw when I attended meetings with them and looking at policies and procedures and talking about examinations. The way in which the Securities Commission trained the people was totally different from the way in which the central bank did. You weren't just thrown out there and told to examine. That does not happen. You have to go through serious training before you join an examination team.
Now, this is strictly off the record, but I would say that where I currently work, we had an inspection by the Securities Commission, and some of the inspectors was actually just reading off the questions and did not understand what they were reading. They actually said, they told me to say, ask you this.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. How are you you're asking me something, but you don't even know when I answer you that what I'm saying is correct or even makes sense. You're just writing down what I say. That's crazy. That's crazy.
So look at it like this. You have persons coming out of graduates from UB, right?
Mhm.
And you just throw them in that role. How is that possible? That's not
Exactly. You
possible.
no,
They have
I
to
know, right?
they have to actually, if you hire them, right? They have to learn the Securities Commission legislation itself. Then they have to learn the role of the regulator. Then they have to learn what all of the Securities Commission registrants do.
Mm-hmm.
In order to do that, they're supposed to arrange with their registrants for their people to come in and do stints. You can't learn, it's not in a book.
Exactly. Exactly. Someone
We
tell
learned,
them that.
right, we learned it by actually going to work along with licensees of the central bank. That's how we learned it. And then in addition to that, we had to do courses internationally in how
Mhm.
to be a regulator. It's
Yeah,
years of
it's yes, it's crazy. They're not prepared, and they have so many things underneath them now that they just can't keep up.
no, but the thing about it is like I was saying to a lot of people, like when I went to work from regulatory, right? Then just into the financial sector. And then I went and I worked offshore. And I tell them this is like night and day. Because when you
Mhm.
work for the regulator, you're not working for money. You work for your country. It's like being on a me working for a government is the same as working for the police force, the defense force, because you're not paid that kind of salary. You have to
Mhm.
be committed to want to work to protect your jurisdiction. They don't have
Yeah.
that. They don't come for a job. It don't work that way. And that's why
Yes.
you see the high turnover.
Mhm.
We were
Yes.
driven from the day we walked into the door. You're here to work for your country.
Yeah, because a lot of them I've seen have moved into the private sector um from the Securities Commission. They get their I guess certificates, their compliance certificates or whatever, and then they move on to the private sector where they can make money.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're doing, is to try and make money. But like I
But do they
said,
know what they're doing is a different story.
no, no, definitely no, that's a no. Uh as well, because they're not well trained from where they came from either.
Of course not. They just a
No.
skim or something and they want to make a salary.
Right. So, because I'm trying to figure out too, is how are you asking about CRS filings, but you've never even seen a CRS form, or you've never been to the actual portals to look at what they look like and what you need to report for. You're
Mhm.
asking you're asking about reporting, but you've never actually don't know what that is either. I mean, like, wow, how
Yeah. And that's what it is.
Yeah, so like I said, with regards to the Securities Commission versus the central bank, it's day and night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why training is so important.
Very.
Even if I look at in the compliance program, you get more central bankers than securities people. I think securities people, they've only just started. A crew of them came out last year. I think they're finishing up now. But before that, it's the central bank. They
Mhm.
send them, they get their ACAMs at the beginning when they first start. And then after that, they come and they actually sit down and do that 18 months course.
Yeah, training is very, very important.
And then some institutions from the top don't like to spend money on training because they're saying, I train you and then you leave and go. But they're not leaving the jurisdiction.
Mhm.
They're not doing it now and going off to somewhere else around the world. They're staying right here. So if you take that attitude, we just have a bunch of untrained people.
right? And, you know, sometimes it's hard actually for persons to come from like industries like the central bank, government agencies, and work in the private sector, because the private sector is cutthroat, to say the least.
It's and I think, but you know, not just the cutthroat part of it. I think persons that work in the private sector, they are spoiled.
This is true too, to
Well,
an
they
extent.
don't know what it is to really work. They don't.
In the private sector, they don't know what it is to work.
No,
What? I disagree with you there.
no,
I guess I feel like government workers may not know how to work and what is
no. You're
required
talking
to work.
full government. I'm talking about quasi government.
Oh, okay. Well, full
No,
government, yeah.
yeah,
I can't come to work and read my paper.
no, no. You
Eat
can't.
breakfast, eat
No.
breakfast, and read your paper.
Pardon?
I said, eat breakfast and read your paper, then go to lunch.
Yeah, no, no. That don't happen in quasi. That don't happen.
Certainly
Not
don't happen in private sector either.
not
How
one.
about you take no lunch?
Yeah. But what I found different was in quasi, there's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of day-to-day work. There's a lot of night work. There's a lot of weekend work, and it doesn't stop. And that part that says any other duties, that sometimes that takes up the same time as your day-to-day work. That's how busy it is. And they stretch you to the 9 yards. And that stretching is not stretching doing what you do every day. It's doing other things. You're
Yeah,
constantly working.
right. I feel like since the pandemic and the working from home, that's exactly what it's been for most people at most places. There is no rest anymore when you get off. You know, before, when you actually physically went to your office, you know, when you left at 5 or 6 o'clock, whatever, you're off. But with working from home, you're never off.
Yeah, yeah. But that's how it was when I was a regulator. You're never off.
Mhm.
You're just never off. It just doesn't happen. Because you're regulating all these banks and trust companies. They're operating in all kinds of jurisdictions. That's one side of it. And then you have all the examinations going on. And then on top of that, you have governmental pressures. Then you have international pressures. And then you have the group of regulators in the Bahamas. And then you have the group of regulators in the offshore jurisdiction. It is just, and then you have all the regulators in the Caribbean. It's a lot. You just spend your time working all night long, all day long. It's just so much from all over the place. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of knowledge that a former regulator brings. Much wider scope compared to the Securities Commission. It's much wider. It is a good place to work. I mean, the people say that it's changing now. But when I went there, you started from the bottom and you're actually trained. That's the difference. All right. So you will present next class. It's not difficult. Lisa, you'll make sure the chapter, right?
I will.
Okay, right. And then we'll hear her presentation. And then we'll do the icon. I don't hear a lot of people talk about the icon.
There's not a lot of icons being used.
No, it's not a product. Whether I hear whether it's by clients or locally. No, that one didn't take off too well.
No, I think because most people don't really see the purpose of it, like it did not come off as they intended it to be used.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because it was supposed to imitate a product that was already in Brazil, but it's not, really didn't take off here at all.
Yeah, because I couldn't see it taking off if you didn't have a lot of clients from Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is that if you wanted that product to be attractive to South America, you then had to find out from your licensees here locally, how many of them actually have clients in South America who would be interested in that product. Because I think you first look at, okay, we have South American clients. Which jurisdictions do they come from? And are they interested in this product?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the starting ground for anything. But who am I to say? I was just a small fry.
In a big pool.
Yes. And when the brilliant idea came up from the brilliant people, let's run with it. So that's what they did. So I was not one of them, sorry to say.
Yeah, like I said, icons, that not very many icons out there.
No. So what I'm saying, it was a piece of legislation and new idea that songs were sang, and there's a whole pass of hymn sheet. They put it in the book all by itself. But I don't see it. I don't see it. Not like that. At all.
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
No. It doesn't. Mm-mm. But all right, so that's next week. I will send you all this executive entity I have. In the meantime,
Okay.
I'll see if I could find a foundation for you too, so you can see the foundation,
Okay.
and then we'll go from there. All right. So have a great
All right.
weekend. See, I let you off early.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I promised. I promised. But that doesn't mean you mustn't read the Executive Entities Act now. That does not mean that. You must read it. Okay? So have a good weekend.
You too.
You too.
Okay? And I remind Mr. Pratt to edit.
Yes, please.
Okay, I will. Okay.
Thank you.
Talk to
Bye-bye.
you later. Have a good week.
Okay, you too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.